So much for tuning into the FIM Festival 2023 live discussion. I'm Devon Cornelius, and thank you so much for joining. It promises to be an engaging and fruitful conversation on all things finances, budgeting, saving, investment opportunities, investment options, and so we are encouraging you to stay tuned. We are also live on ZIZ Radio, Von Radio, Freedom FM, and Win FM. We'll take a short break for the FIM jingle, and when we come back, we'll get right into the conversation. Stay tuned.
It's Financial Information Month in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Financial empowerment through education. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you all about it. Learn to spend wisely. FIM. Invest to grow your money. FIM. Business stability. FIM. Step up financially. FIM. Help the region's economy. Work to financial security. Prosperity for all of we. FIM is for you and me. FIM is for everybody. So tell your friends and your whole family. Financial empowerment through education. Build yourself and the entire region. Learn to spend wisely. FIM. Invest to grow your money. FIM. Business stability. FIM. Step up financially. FIM. Financial Information Month. Financial empowerment through education.
I'm Devon Cornelius, and thank you so much for joining. Joining me on the program this evening is Davinia Tomlinson and Mr. Trevor Blake, two exceptional people. And I can tell you from the conversation we had prior to coming on this program, you are in store for a lot of good information this evening. Davinia Tomlinson is an award-winning entrepreneur whose business interests span Raincheck in the UK and St. Kitts-based Rosewood Advisory Services. Davinia has a first-class honors degree from Aston University, an executive MBA from City University, and holds the CFA Investment Management Certificate. Welcome to the discussion, Davinia. And Mr. Trevor Blake, Managing Director of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. Mr. Blake holds an MBA in Financial Studies from the University of Nottingham and qualified as an associate of the UK Chartered Institute of Bankers. Trevor, welcome to the program. All right, so this evening we will be speaking about adopting good financial behavior, and we will be looking at a wide cross section of all things that translate into good financial behavior: budgeting and active savings, getting ready for retirement, monthly budgeting and bill payments, tips for managing financial stress. I'm looking forward to that one. Setting financial goals, importance of good credit, wealth creation / investment options. And so in anything that we do, it is a given that is ladies first. And so we're going to begin the conversation this evening with Miss Davinia Tomlinson, who will be presenting on the first section of the discussion this evening, speaking on budgeting and active savings. Davinia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you to you all for tuning in. So as Devon has said, my name is Davinia, and over the course of the next 20 to 25 minutes, what I'd like to do is to share with you some best practice tips and ideas, things that you can implement straight away without necessarily having to go away and do anything particularly strenuous, in order to optimize your own financial well-being, not just for yourselves, but for your loved ones as well. So let's get right into it with my slides straight away. And just a reminder for those people that are tuning in on the radio, anything that is more visual, I will be giving you a bit of a breakdown so you understand what we'll be talking about. So the first thing that I'd like to talk to you about this evening is your personal finance hierarchy, and that's just a really fancy way of saying some of the milestones along the way when it comes to your financial planning. Now, all of us, irrespective of where we are in terms of our financial journey, will need to fulfill at least 3/4 of the stages on this personal finance hierarchy in order to feel like we're in really good financial health. And I'm going to talk you through them stage by stage. So as you might imagine, if you think about a pyramid or, a hierarchy in terms of, a hierarchy of needs, some of you will be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And right at the bottom of your personal finance hierarchy is what I refer to as your basic financial needs. So this is anything that centers around your day-to-day cost of living, your operational expenditure, so your transport into work, your grocery bills, your utility bills, all of those things. If you think about your cash flow on a day-to-day basis, that is basically what will constitute your basic financial needs. And the reason it's at the bottom of your personal finance hierarchy is that, of course, all of us will need to make sure that we are fulfilling this stage on our financial journeys before we can progress to anything else. And this is the reason why we move up in stages in thinking about, once we've fulfilled all of our basic financial needs and they are being met, we can then progress to some of the other stages. So it really is important that when you're thinking about, your income versus your expenditure, and we don't need to be accountants in order to do this. I think some of us, we use certain language, it can be quite intimidating. And so I would encourage you to familiarize yourself with some of the vocabulary so that it doesn't intimidate you, but also so that you can be and feel more empowered when it comes to your financial planning. So, of course, your income is, your wages, your salary, what you are paid on a weekly or monthly basis. And then your expenses is anything that you are paying out, your utility bills, as I said, any childcare, your car bills, all of that. So your basic financial needs are a really important stage when it comes to your personal finance hierarchy. The next stage up is what I refer to as your safety net. You could also think about it as a rainy day fund or an emergency fund. And this is where we really think about some of those unforeseen circumstances that we may not necessarily have planned for, but I think having a pot of money that's set aside can give you that confidence, that comfort and that reassurance that comes from knowing that if something untoward happened, the car breaks down or something goes wrong at home, you have the means without having to borrow to fulfill your emergency needs. And so your safety net is really important. The next stage in your personal finance hierarchy is investing. My background is in the investment management industry, and the reason that I left the corporate world and decided to set up my own business is that I recognized that there was a real gap in terms of the proportion of people, the vast majority of people who needed to identify ways of making their money work harder for them, but lacked the financial education, they lacked the access, and they lacked the understanding around how investing works. And so on that basis, they were therefore missing out on the opportunity to grow their money and build wealth over the long term. And of course, Mr. Blake will share with you some of the ways that you can do that in more depth. The next stage after investing is to think about your later life planning. And one of the things that I love, I was at a drinks reception last night actually, and I remember saying to somebody, we were talking about retirement planning for that particular company, and I said how excited I was about pensions. And then I said, who gets excited about pensions? I get excited about pensions because, it's the worst thing in the world to think about, at the point at which you have fulfilled your employment life, and you're thinking about, all of the lovely things you might want to do in retirement, and then you don't have the money to live comfortably in your retirement. I think there are a number of misconceptions and preconceptions about retirement planning, and so later life planning is a really important stage on your personal finance hierarchy. And then the final stage, right in the apex of your personal finance hierarchy, is thinking about your legacy planning. How can you efficiently transfer assets to the next generation? And I'm hoping that there will be some of you that will be thinking, I'm sure that there will be some of you that will be thinking, I don't have assets to transfer. You may not have assets to transfer today, but later down the line, over the course of your working life, you will have accumulated and acquired assets, and you want to make sure that you have done all of the right things, both legally and from an estate planning perspective, to make sure you can transfer those assets to your children. There is no complexity. We know that lots of us, I'm sure, will have first-hand experience of what can go wrong when some of the elders in our family and within our communities perhaps pass away. There is no will in place. There are siblings overseas, there are siblings within the Federation and across the region who then find themselves struggling with the complexities around transferring those assets. And so legacy planning is, again, a really important part of your personal finance hierarchy. So now just moving forwards then into thinking about, what does this look like in practice? And, in the book that I wrote, some of the images that you will see are taken directly from that book. Cut your cloth according to your size. Lots of us all have grown up with very heavy influences from our grandparents. And this is something that my grandmother used to say to me all the time growing up. And so it was really important for me in writing the book and, talking about financial literacy, that I would share some of those pearls of wisdom from her. So cutting your cloth according to your size, to me, is the perfect analogy for budgeting and thinking about how we manage the money that we have. And, as it says on the screen, and for those people that are listening in, we talk about knowing your numbers. Mm-hmm. There are some of us that will say, oh, gosh, I don't even want to think about the numbers. I was terrible at math at school, but yet we are managing money all the time. We are managing numbers every single day, whether we are paid in cash, whether we are paid digitally. And so it's important that we familiarize ourselves with our numbers in terms of how much am I spending, how much am I saving, how much am I paying, on debt repayments. We don't want to bury our heads in the sand, and we really need to make sure that we are living within our means. And that's what we're talking about when we refer to cutting our cloth according to our size.
And Davinia, I'm really happy that you stated that in order for you to understand budgeting and saving, you first have to start with basic financial needs. And I think it's very important for people to understand what their basic financial needs are. But if I could put in a question here, what are some of the tools or applications would you recommend in terms of budgeting? I know we have of course, a calculator, but in terms of setting up a template and track your finances then?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think on a very basic level, most of us can get access to a spreadsheet, or a ledger. There are apps that are available. If you're in the US, there's a brilliant one called Mint. Lots of us can download that here in this region as well. So Mint, M-I-N-T. And that will enable you to track. The challenge, of course, with some of the apps, particularly for those people that are, that are paid in cash and, then obviously those apps are going to be directly linked to a debit account or a checking account, and so on that basis it may not necessarily provide you with the complete and comprehensive picture. And so on that basis, if you do have some kind of ledger, a very simple ledger that just says on a monthly basis, this is what I'm spending, and this is what my income is, and identify the balance between them. And so I really want people to get into the mindset of running their lives like a business. And we will see when we move to the next slide, and we're talking about some of the different attributes of financial control. If you had to run a business and you are managing your cash flow, you're thinking about your profitability, you're thinking about your liquidity all of the time, we apply those principles to our personal lives. So the thing that I would stress at this juncture as well is that we want to be able to do this without judgment of ourselves, because I think money is a conversation that is fraught with emotion. It evokes a lot of stress.
Yes.
If you're in a position of abundance and surplus, perhaps it does not. But I think for the vast majority of people, not having a basic understanding of what's happening around our money can really make us feel anxious. And so I'd encourage anybody that's listening and is thinking, actually I have no idea what's really going on with the money, to just do a basic ledger that says, on a weekly basis, how much did I spend and what was my income, and just track it.
Wow.
And then use that data to extrapolate, use it to be able to make some projections as to what might happen next week. Was I better off or was I worse off? Ultimately, what we are trying to do is to influence and optimize our decision making by using the data that we have. And so we don't want any judgment. We want to treat it as if we were talking kindly to our child or speaking kindly to our partner or our best friend, somebody that we really love, and that we are not going to attack them, we're not going to judge them. That's the same kindness and grace we want to afford ourselves.
Awesome. Thank you so much for saying that. And, we spoke about managing financial stress, and I know you're going to get to that later. And, in having conversations with people, especially my age, I can tell you they have cases of trying to manage financial stress. And with the cost of living and so many other factors, I think it is a skill that is definitely needed today. And so I'm looking forward to what you have to present on that.
Yeah, exactly as you described. I mean, the correlation between money and mental health is one that's been well documented, and so I do have some tips around that. But if we could just move to the next slide. And so here is, when we were talking about, what a ledger might look like. It doesn't have to be this pie, but this is just an example. So there is a commonly used framework called 50-30-20. And effectively, it's a way of categorizing your outgoings so that you have an understanding of where your money is going, and you can start to put some parameters and boundaries around your spending and exercise some discipline. So with 50-30-20, what we're advocating here is saying 50% of your outgoings, or your income rather, 50% of your income should be assigned to your needs. So that might include your utility bills, your childcare, your groceries, your housing. 30% of your income to your wants, so all of your leisure activities, the things that you enjoy doing, liming, going to fets, whatever it is, 30% of your income should be assigned to that.
Okay.
And then 20% or a fifth of your income assigned to your savings and investments. Now, again, when I talk about this framework, the thing that I always say is it's like a lot of frameworks. We want to take what we need and leave the rest. So again, this is not a stick to beat ourselves with. 50-30-20 for me might look like 70-20-10. And so that ratio might look completely different. But what we are trying to introduce is that discipline, the principle around making sure that you're in control of your money is not in control of you, so that at the end of the week, you're not saying, I have no idea how much I spend on going out. I have no idea how much I've got left to buy petrol, put in my car to get to work. So we want to have some framework. But what we see there is, importantly, your needs are taken care of, your wants are taken care of. We don't want to deprive ourselves of, daily joy, but also that you are putting some money aside for later life. And so whether it is 20% or 1%, if you are able to put even $10 a week, $10 a month away, know that you are doing something really good to invest in future you. And, you should treat that as something to celebrate. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but you start where you are and do what you can, and then build it up slowly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Devincia. You want to move into your next presentation?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Next slide. And so when we're thinking about financial control, again, the thing that I often discuss with my clients is the principle and the idea of being CEO of your own life. And so what does good financial control enable you to do? So scenario planning. So you're able to say, what does the best case scenario look like? If everything goes really well, there are no emergencies, there are no mishaps, I know that I'm going to earn this amount of money, and broadly speaking, my expenditure looks like this. What kinds of things can I now project and plan for? So can I take that holiday? Can I afford to change my car? What are some of the things that you might be able to afford to do there? Debt management. So, when we talked about the correlation between money and mental health, we know that, when you are heavily indebted or indebted at all, irrespective of the magnitude, that can again evoke lots of anxiety, feelings of stress, and that can become a downward spiral where you're worried that you can never get out of it. And so having an understanding of how much do I have left in the pot once my basic needs are taken care of and everything else will enable you to say, right, I can afford to pay a bit more towards my debt, which will ultimately enable me to drive down that debt load much sooner than I perhaps had anticipated. And I think, again, at this point, it's important for people to recognize that when it comes to their debt, the debt, whatever debt situation you may find yourself in, we should never view it as something that is representative of who we are. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where we need to get access to debt, and we use debt and we find that it may, result in a spiral that we struggle to manage. But it's important that we're able to confront it and take the necessary steps to contribute towards driving that debt down. So this is not, about us saying, people that are in debt are bad and people that are not in debt are good. It's purely about saying, what can I do based on the information that I have and the cash that I have available to improve? And then again, you know, when we're thinking about financial control, what saving and investment decisions are we able to take? So if you have no idea or understanding of what's happening with your money on a monthly basis, you don't know how much you've got left over, you can't put any money into your emergency saving pot because you're living every day as an emergency rather than in a state of seamless flow. You can't make longer term investment decisions, and so on that basis you will constantly feel as though you're on a treadmill. And so what we want is to take a more planned approach and to feel less tactical in our decision making.
What advice would you give to people who are heavily indebted, making a low income, and they perhaps have so many responsibilities, so many things to take care of, and they feel like they're drowning?
Yeah, and it's a situation that I have a lot of sympathy with. And I think for people in that situation, I would say that it's really important to ask for help, and ask for help from the financial institutions, you know, who might have been the credit providers in the first instance. So I suppose you start with understanding, you know, where are my debt sources? You know, where are the different places, institutions, individuals that I owe money to? Be clear on that. Again, when we're taking this ledger approach, make a list, a very simple list. You can put it in your notes app on your phone, you can write it down. Be clear on those different debt sources. Then you might grade them or rank them in order of size. You know, so who do I owe the most amount of money to, or how long have I held that debt? You know, which is the one that's keeping you awake at night? Find a way to rank them so that you can prioritize. Because if you've got multiple different debt sources, it's impossible for you to, it's a bit like boiling the ocean. It's impossible for you to prioritize them all simultaneously. So find a system, find a way to identify the one that's giving you the most amount of stress, and have a conversation with that institution or that individual as to how you intend to pay that off. And so rather than you completely ignoring the issue and hoping it will go away, which of course it will not, it's important that you demonstrate that you are facing the challenge and that you are taking steps towards it. And so even if it means an additional 1% contribution that you can make to that debt over, you know, a period of time, that you are committed to doing something about it. And again, there's a lot of confidence that I think comes from that, knowing that you are facing your issue rather than trying to run away from it.
Thank you so much for that, Davinia. For those of you who are just tuning in, you're listening to the FIM Festival 2023 live discussion here on ZIZ Radio and TV. And we're also live on Freedom FM, Von Radio and Win FM. On the panel with me this evening is Davinia Tomlinson, award-winning entrepreneur and author, and Mr. Trevor Blake, Managing Director. Thank you guys so much for joining us. The conversation is going so smooth. Davinia, go ahead.
So we're now my favorite topic, of course, because we're talking about retirement planning and pensions.
Okay.
And I think, you know, as I said at the start of the conversation, there are some misconceptions when it comes to pension planning. It's a bit like will planning. I think people assume that, you know, it's for old people. And, you know, if you Google, you know, actually, you know, as an experiment, for anyone listening or tuning in, as an experiment, if you put pensions or retirement saving into Google and then click on images and just see some of the images that come up, it's a category that is synonymous with the elderly. And of course, we are drawing down our pensions in later life as elderly people, but we need to put money aside for our pensions while we are in our peak earning years, you know, in our 20s, 30s and 40s. And so, you know, when you look at this on a global basis, very few of us are saving enough for our retirement. And that can be quite a sobering thought. Again, it's a bit like the debt conversation in which you think, well, I can never get out of this debt, or, you know, I'm never going to be able to retire, so why bother? I may as well, you know, or maybe, you know, I've heard some people who will go even more morbid than that and say, you know, I might die before I can even get access to my pension, so why am I bothering to save? And I always say, but what happens if you live? You know, I want you to live. And what happens if you live?
Right.
So we need to start thinking about our pension. So again, when you think about our budgeting and our 50, 30, 20, for example, or whatever the ratios look like for you, see whether you can siphon off. I always say start with 1% and then increase it to 2%. If you are already saving into your pension, that is wonderful. Then for you, the next step might look like understanding how much you might need to retire. And there are a number of calculators. I know that there are some brilliant tools that are offered by the financial institutions in the region that can enable you to identify how much you will have if based on your current projected contributions into your pension pot. So just understand how much you will need and then what you need to do in order to get there. The next thing I would say when it comes to, planning for future you, investing in future you, is to think about protecting what you have. So I think, again, lots of us, when you're having conversations about wealth creation, wealth management, immediately our mindset goes to, well, that's for people that have already got lots of money. We talk about high net worth or net worth in general. Everybody has a net worth. But again, it's a term that is synonymous with high or ultra high. So you think of millionaires or billionaires and you think, well, net worth is not a conversation that's for me. And it's a similar principle when it comes to, your protections. Lots of us will have maybe private health insurance if you're able to have that, or life insurance. For those of us that don't have that, I think it's really important that we think about protecting what we have, and we think of ourselves as our biggest asset by far. I always say this, whether it comes to you protecting yourself from a life insurance perspective, but just in general, knowing that everything that we poured into ourselves over the course of our academic career, our working lives, we've acquired training, skills, knowledge that enables us to go forward out into the world, into future jobs and careers, and command a really good salary. So we are assets. We need to protect our assets, and we need to protect what we have, however big or small it is. If you think about, sometimes there are stories about lottery winners that will come up in the press, and it will say, you might win £1 million or $1 million overnight. But then, in a year's time, when they track, where are they now, these people that have won the lottery? Well, if you didn't know how to manage $1, then you're not going to know how to manage $1 million. So starting where you are and doing what you can is a really important principle when it comes to your financial resilience, I would say. And then the final part, in thinking about future you, is making a will. And, we've talked about, what happens if you die intestate. So intestate is basically dying without leaving a will in place. We make a number of assumptions. I know some of the assumptions that we make might be cultural. I know that some people think, if I write a will, then I'm inviting people.
I can tell you.
You invite confusion into the family. We don't want to talk about it. We think it's morbid. Some of us that are particularly spiritual might think, well, I'm calling death upon myself if I write a will. And I would like us to think beyond that, involve, if you are somebody that has elders in your family, try to identify a way to broach the subject with them without them thinking that you're trying to kill them. Just try and have a really open conversation about legacy planning, because it's really important. And the easiest way to do that is to just point to some of the many examples that we have of chaos that can ensue when family members pass away. You're already in the midst of deep grief and bereavement, and then in addition to that, there is so much legal complexity in terms of unraveling their estate, and that's not what we want. So having those things in place is a really important step when it comes to your legacy, estate planning, and investing in future you as well. So, again, very simply here, when we're thinking about our pension life cycle, and what should you be thinking about, on the chart, for those people that are listening in, we've got a chart here that is pointing to your accumulation phase when it comes to your retirement saving. And your accumulation phase, exactly as it describes, is the point at which, or the period of time through which you're accumulating cash, whether it be through fixed income deposits, treasury bills, stock market investments, shares, whatever it is, that will contribute towards your upkeep in later life. Your decumulation phase, of course, is the drawdown. So this is basically the point at which you've now retired and you need to get access to your funds. We need to be thinking about our retirement saving in these two distinct phases. Your accumulation phase, as I say, which is where you are contributing, and your decumulation phase, which is where you are withdrawing. One of the good things about living in the Federation is that there are so many wonderful examples of centenarians, people that have had really beautiful long lives. And if you imagine, I read a study very recently that pointed to the fact that the average baby girl born today will live to be 100, and yet there is a huge income gap or pensions gap, certainly between men and women when it comes to saving for retirement on a global basis. And so it is imperative that we do what we can as early as we can to save for later life. And there are a number of different means through which you might fund your retirement. Your pension, of course, is one of them. I mean, your pension is effectively an investment. It's an investment in future you, and it will be composed of a number of different investment instruments, as I've mentioned, fixed income, stock market investments. But there are alternative ways. Your pension should be viewed as just one part of your portfolio, your overall retirement portfolio. Some of us also have businesses, business income, and we want to get to a position where those businesses can run without our intervention and we're able to draw an income from them. And one of the most popular ones, which I know in the Federation is something that lots of people rely on, is rental income. And so I know that real estate is a particularly popular way to think about how you can draw an income, not just at the point of retirement, but certainly when you get to retirement, it can be a really nice booster to your overall retirement portfolio. The reason I outline some of these different options is purely to serve the point that actually there are options. So your pension is one that, I'm going to get excited about because I love it. But there are so many different ways that you can save for your retirement. And so it's really just about keeping an open mind and identifying where those sources of income will come from. Wanting to have, a comfortable retirement will require us to diversify our income streams, have multiple income streams if we're able to do that, but to start by having a plan as to what that might look like. So we've talked already, Devon, about the correlation between money and mental health, and as it says here, you control your money doesn't control you. I constantly have to remind people, clients of mine, irrespective of their financial health, there are lots of clients that I have who are in a position of financial abundance, but yet still feel hugely stressed about their finances, perhaps because they have stepped outside the confines of what they can afford.
Okay.
There are situations in which lots of us can succumb to lifestyle creep. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with that term, lifestyle creep is effectively where, you slowly start, perhaps you've got a pay increase, or perhaps you are surrounded by people, you've moved to a new country, you've moved into a new work environment, you're watching people doing things and you're thinking, oh, that looks good, or maybe I should be doing that and I want to keep up with the Joneses. And so suddenly you start to do things, that's lifestyle creep. And it's fine if you can afford it. It's also fine if that's part of your plan for your life.
Okay.
The biggest thing that I try to guard young people against in particular is this idea that they have to be seen to be doing a certain thing, and then it becomes more important to look like you have money than it is to actually have money. My priority is always to actually have money rather than, look
like
and have the appearances of having money. And I think it's particularly, in an era in which, social media prevails, we spend so much of our time online, and it's not just young people. I know lots of people my age who spend a lot of time on social media. And of course, one of the challenges of that is we are stepping into an artificial environment in which we have no real understanding of whether or not it's people's real lives. We think, people that are the same age, from the same background, if they are doing certain things, then why am I not doing those things too? I must be behind in life. I'm failing at life. So I now need to emulate what they appear to be doing. And I always encourage people to not just stay in your lane and stay focused, but actually to remind yourself, and Mr. Blake will talk about this when we come on to financial goals, what is it that you actually want to achieve? And be really disciplined, really focused, and be an exemplar in your group of friends and in your circle for saying, I know that that's what you want to do, and I'm going to cheerlead you and champion you in doing that, but I want to do something completely different because the plans that I have for my life look different. I think that's really important. So when we think about our mental health when it comes to money, we know that, poor financial health is a leading cause of anxiety, panic attacks, depression. And so one of the best ways to mitigate that is to have our plan in place, whether it's for your debt, whether it's for your savings, for your travel, whatever it is, and give ourselves grace. So we don't need to beat ourselves over the head with a big stick if we veer off course and have money mishaps. All of us, everyone in this room, in fact, I'm sure will have had a money mishap. Whether or not we want to reveal it is a different thing. But we will all have money mishaps. And so it's just about veering ourselves back on track if we steer off course.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you so much. We're talking about adopting good financial behavior. And you piqued my interest when you spoke about will planning and how difficult it could be approaching, whether it be a family, extended family member, a loved one, about the topic of will planning. What advice would you give to people if they are contemplating having that conversation? Go ahead.
Yeah, great question. I think, and of course, there are different circumstances in different families, aren't there? I think, if you are having a conversation with someone that you already think might be sensitive to it, I would try to identify an ally or somebody that they know
Okay.
that has a listening ear. That
Right.
will, that will be given a listening ear to by the person that you were speaking to. I think that's really important. So don't go in cold, don't go in alone. Try to get somebody along with you. It could
Or
be a
with backup.
sibling, right? Go with backup. It could be a sibling. It could be, I don't know, an aunt or uncle, but somebody that is trusted by the family. I think it's also important to maybe get some professional advice or guidance. Again, there's a lot of free resources out there that can enable you to just go in forearmed with this is information. It might be that, you plan a campaign over a period of months or weeks. It doesn't have to be a one and done conversation. It could be that you maybe pose the question and you say, I heard something about estate planning. Is that something you've considered? Have you already made provisions? You might share an anecdote about the chaos that's ensued somewhere else, either real or imagined. Ultimately you're trying to open up a conversation. But again, we all will know those circumstances in which people have suffered, and we know that the people that love us in our families don't want us to suffer needlessly and to suffer twice through bereavement. And so I think it's important that we gather all of the information that we can together, get an ally, and get a professional involved, so it doesn't just look like you are trying to get your hands on the assets. And it could be as simple as saying, who would you want to be the executor of your will? Who will you trust in the family? Who is the person that you would want to represent you and your wishes at the point at which you are no longer here? It's a difficult conversation to have, absolutely, but I think to be forewarned is to be forearmed.
Thank you so much for that, Davinia. For those of you who are just tuning in, you're listening to the FIM Festival 2023 live discussion here on ZIZ TV and radio, and we're also live on Freedom FM, Von Radio, and Win FM. I'm Devon Cornelius. We'll take a short break for the FIM jingle, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation for this evening. Stay tuned.
It's Financial Information Month in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Financial empowerment through education. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you all about it. Learn to spend wisely. Invest to grow your money. Business stability. Step up financially. FIM. Help build the region's economy. Work to financial security. Prosperity for all of we. FIM is for you and me. FIM is for everybody. So tell your friends and your whole family. Financial empowerment through education. Build yourself and the entire region. Learn to spend wisely. Invest to grow your money. Business stability. Step up financially. Financial Information Month. Financial empowerment through education.
Welcome back to the FIM Festival 2023 live discussion here on ZIZ Television. I'm Devon Cornelius, and joining me on the panel discussion this evening is Davinia Tomlinson, an award-winning author and entrepreneur, and Mr. Trevor Blake, Managing Director. The conversation has been flowing so well, and we've touched on adopting good financial behavior. But of course, we're continuing the conversation. For those of you who tuned in late, we touched on budgeting and active savings, getting ready for retirement, monthly budgeting and bill payments, and tips for managing financial stress. Davinia, any closing comments on your presentation?
Yeah, so just to wrap up, and I think for anybody that's tuning in online or via TV, you can take a picture of this slide, hopefully. But in summary, think about making a budget as the cornerstone of your financial planning. So you'll be unable to make any fruitful decisions about future you without having an understanding of what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So again, thinking back to your personal finance hierarchy, what does your income look like? What does your expenditure look like? And are there any adjustments that you might need to make in order to optimize your financial well-being? So that's the first one. The second one, which we haven't actually talked about, but I think is important, schedule a regular money date by yourself or with your partner. And I think that's really important. There is a lot of data and research that points to the fact that people are happier talking about their intimate lives than they are their money. And so it's really important that we're able to be upfront, be open about, you know, whether it's affordability, whether it's about, you know, your future investment goals, your future financial needs, all of those things. If you're in a partnership, if you are married or cohabiting, you need to be able to talk about money with your partner. That's really important. It's important that we think about, you know, our credit score and managing our financial health. So, you know, thinking about, you know, how we can make sure that we're investing and reducing our debt burden and that debt load, and using our budget again as the foundation in order to facilitate that. It's important, of course, that we invest into our pension and that we are saving and contributing towards future us, that we are protecting ourselves, protecting our assets. Check your social security record. So I know lots of us will...
Very important.
Lots of us will have social security. It's a similar picture in the UK. We have national insurance, which is the equivalent. But again, lots of us have no understanding as to whether that will be enough for us to retire on. And so where else will that income come from? So that's a very simple thing that we can all do. Hopefully social security won't be inundated tomorrow, but I hope that you will all check your social security records and identify some alternative ways of bridging that gap between, you know, your projected needs and where you are currently. And then finally, give yourself grace. You know, mindset really matters when it comes to your money management or any other aspect of your life. We don't want to beat ourselves up about some of the money mishaps we might have had. You are more than the money mistakes of your past. We all are. And so it's important that whatever we do from tonight onwards is done in a spirit of abundance and grace rather than scarcity and lack.
Thank you so much, Davinia. I had a few questions that came in from social media, YouTube to be exact. The first question was, at what age should the accumulation phase for retirement begin?
I love that question.
Okay.
So I would say as soon as you start your first full-time job out of education. So so once you have completed all of your, you know, primary, secondary, and of course tertiary education, and I know that some people will then go back and do masters subsequently, and that's fine. But at the point at which you've embarked on your first professional job, I think that's the point at which you should start putting some money aside for retirement. I think that's really important.
Wow. And would you advise home ownership or rental when thinking about wealth creation?
I think it depends on where you are, actually. And again, this is why it's important that we're able to do the numbers. So in some jurisdictions, you know, there are parts of the world, you know, if you live in a particularly expensive part of the world, Hong Kong, London, New York, for example, actually the numbers might mean that there is an opportunity cost associated with you ploughing all of your money into home ownership and therefore precluding yourself from being able to save and invest because all of your money goes into the house. And so on that basis, you might think, well, even though rent is high, by renting, I'm passing on those costs to my landlord, but that frees up the rest of my budget to save and invest. If you're within the Federation, actually, you might think, well, at the point at which I'm able to invest in land and invest in a property, it's a great thing, but it requires you to have an understanding of your budget and know that you will still need to have some cash saved as well for those emergencies. So I think it just requires you to be clear on what your objective is, what you're able to afford, and make sure that there is provision in your budget for that saving and investment portion too.
And how can we approach conversations about estate planning without family members thinking we are inviting
Death.
Yeah.
I think it requires us, in the same way as when we're looking at our own numbers, rather than, you know, we're not trying to judge ourselves, we don't want to beat ourselves up, that we are really objective and impartial about it. We don't, you know, at the point at which we see the conversation becoming emotional or infused with contention, that we leave it alone. We don't keep, you know, probing that same conversation. We come back to it at a later date, but just arm ourselves with all of that information so that we are not speaking on the basis purely of hearsay. The anecdotes are helpful, I think, in being able to, you know, provide a bit of reality to proceedings. But actually what we do need is, this is the legal basis upon which your estate planning should be made. So if you don't have a will in place, then what will happen is all of the assets, all of the wealth that you have worked so hard and tirelessly to accumulate over the course of your working life, as is in the case of lots of the elders that we know, it will basically be held in a kind of legal purgatory indefinitely. Nobody will be able to benefit from those assets, and that can't be what you will have wanted when you were accumulating them in the first place. So we want people to remember that they can't make assumptions about their will planning and assume, well, you should know what I want, or, you know, I told my daughter or I told my son. we have to have it documented somewhere, and it has to be legally binding in order for it to be sound.
Thank you so much. Adopting good financial behavior. Good financial behavior should be a fundamental aspect of our lives. It refers to the way a person manages his or her money, makes financial decisions, and deals with financial issues and or stress. Thank you so much, Davinia Tomlinson, for that very engaging and fruitful presentation. Thank you. We are going to continue this evening with Mr. Trevor Blake, and he will be presenting on setting financial goals, importance of good credit, and wealth creation / investment options. Trevor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Devon, and I want to say good night to your viewing and listening audience. I hope that you find the presentation. I know you would have found Davina's presentation very interesting.
Yes.
I hope I could add something to that conversation. Much of what she says dovetails nicely with what I would have to say.
Okay.
I'm going to try not to repeat anything, but there's some areas that coincide quite nicely. So setting financial goals. This one might wonder why is this important, but to get anywhere you must have a plan. If you want to get across the country in an area that you don't know, it's important that you have a map. You must have a road map to guide you so that you get where you want to go in the most effective and efficient way possible. So it's important if you are trying to achieve financial resilience, financial comfort, that you have a roadmap to get you there. And when you're setting goals, there's a acronym that I want you to remember, which is SMART. And on the next slide here, those of you who are viewing will see that acronym. So to set SMART goals, so your goals should be specific. Your goal, it should be sort of definitive. I mean, not something that's vague or, that airy-fairy, but something that is quite precise. Look, what do I want and what am I seeking to achieve? And you should have that level of sort of specificity in the goals that you set. So you know where you want to go. It could be to have $1,000 by the end of the year, or the end of any period that you want. But it must be specific, so you know exactly where you are. Which leads to the next point. For it to be measurable, it should be quantifiable. You need to be able to know when you've gotten to where you've achieved. You need to know how you are progressing towards the goal. And in that vein, you should perhaps be setting intermediate goals as you go along. So if the objective is to get to $1,000, you must say, well, by the end of the first quarter, I should have maybe 250, or not less than 250, if I am going to get to the end point by the end of the period that I have set out. So it's important for it to be measurable in those regards. It as well has to be achievable. We all have dreams.
Yes.
Yeah, but when we're setting goals, we have to introduce some reality into it and say, look, this is a goal that could be achieved. And one of the ways you should consider is whether or not anybody else has achieved that. Is this something that people have done? Could you start off from zero and get to $1 million? Well, people have done it. There are lots of self-made millionaires, even billionaires in the world today. So you have to set goals that are achievable. They should also be realistic, and realistic in terms of them being suited to your own circumstances. As Davinia said, you must know yourself. It's not about what Mr. Jones down the road is doing, but what you want and what is appropriate to your own circumstances, and not what somebody else is doing. And you must have a time horizon. You must say, my goals must be achieved by X time. And you are able to track your progress to see that you are able to achieve those goals within that period of time. Now, not everything goes according to plan. Things can happen. Things get in the way. We had the COVID pandemic. Some people lost their jobs. So some of the goals they might have set at that time, they have to go back and say, well, you know, because I lost my job, I could not have met that goal in that period of time. So it's important as well, during the period, you continually assess where you are in relation to the goals that you've set. And sometimes you have to go back and recalibrate and adjust your goals based on the objective circumstances at the particular point in time. So that is important as well. And if you want to achieve anything, it's important that you set SMART goals. Many of us, by true happenstance and good luck, achieve things, but most of us have to set some targets and work towards achieving those targets over time. In terms of good credit, and some people might wonder, why is it important? And if you happen to be looking at the TV and see these slides, you'll see a guy on his knees proposing to his girlfriend. And she said, no, not until you improve your credit. So it's important that we have good credit. But good credit is important to enable you to access credit. If you need a loan, you go to a bank, your credit union, whatever, they are going to check with the other banks. They're going to do a credit check to find out, is this person a good risk?
Right.
So if you do not have good credit, you may find yourself being unable to access loans and other forms of credit. One of the important things as well is banks tend to price their loans based on the risk. If you have good credit, you're seen as good risk, you might get a lower rate of interest. You might get better terms for the loans. Even if the interest rate is the same as for other persons, you may have better terms for your loans because of your good credit standing. It may also reduce the need for collateral. If you are not such a good risk because you've had a number of bad debts with other institutions, a bank, even if they want to lend you, or a credit union for that matter, may say, in order for us to lend you, you need to put a certain amount in place in terms of collateral to securitize that loan. If your credit is good, the need for collateral may be reduced.
Okay.
As someone with good credit also have more options for getting loans, etc. They're able to shop around to see what is available, and other financial institutions would be interested in getting their business, so they might be even targeting them. So instead of you having to go to the financial institution, the financial institution may be coming to you to offer you credit so that you're able to get what you want. And not many of us have the disposable income that we need to acquire assets, especially the bigger ticket items, a car, a house, and things like that. So you need credit in order to acquire these things. And in order to build wealth, in order to create wealth, you have sometimes to borrow and put those funds to work for you, to invest those funds in some asset that will over time create a benefit to you. So it's important to have good credit, so you could progress towards wealth creation. So how do we create wealth? Firstly, one has to earn. So you have to get a job, start a business, whatever, something to earn your money. That's the first step. You would not be able to create wealth unless you have something to work with. You must have something in order to work with to create that wealth. You cannot create wealth out of anything. You need money, you need ideas, you need, so if you don't have a job that is paying you sufficient money so that you have disposable income to invest, you have to find something. Start a business. Find some product, something that you're good at that you could sell to others to earn money in order to start building wealth. And then after earning, the next step you have to do is to retain some of what you earn. Davina went at length about the importance of budgeting and all that, so I wouldn't cover that again, but it is important that you put aside, and she used the 50-30-20 rule. What I would say is at least 10%, whatever you earn, at least 10% you should try to retain. So no matter what your circumstances, no matter what your income level is, try to retain at least 10% of that as a starter. The more you are able to retain, the better it is, and the quicker you're able to create wealth. But if you start out from 10% from the word go, I think you're in good standard. You're in good stead, sorry. And what you should be seeking to do is to try to increase that proportion of your income that you're retaining, so that you could have sufficient to save and then to invest to create wealth. Now, after retaining those funds, the next thing is to do is to save. And as Davina said, you have to put aside your emergency fund, save for the rainy day. There are going to be times when you need to call on that emergency fund to deal with some big ticket items, whether it be a health matter or what have you. So savings is important for that. But savings is not enough. As I frequently say, I don't know anybody who saved themselves rich. I mean, there may be some out there, but I just don't know them. So if there are some, you know them, great. But savings alone will not do it. It's important to save, because you have to have that nest egg to deal with the emergencies, deal with the rainy days, etc.
Correct.
But you have to save and build that savings to a level that you could then take some of that savings to invest. Because that is how you're going to create wealth. You're going to create wealth by investing. So the next step is, after savings, is to invest. And there are a plethora of things you could invest in, and we're going to talk about some of them in a minute. So savings that enable you to multiply the assets that you have, the money that you have, so that you're able to create wealth. And what we want to be able to do is to create wealth, generational wealth, because that's not something within our circles that we tend to talk about a lot. We want perhaps to get a lot of money so that we could buy a nice car, build a big house, and things like that. But let's think about creating wealth for generational purposes, so that it will go down through generations, and that your future generations are able to start life a little more comfortably than you did, and are able to build on what you have created, and create even more wealth into the future. So what then we could do in terms of investing and the investment options that are available to you? From the very basic, in terms of generating income, we have CDs or fixed deposits with banks and other financial institutions. Those are good. They give you a better interest than savings for the most part. So that's something that you should start to branch out into almost immediately after having built up your nest egg. The benefit of CDs as well, they're relatively liquid in that they're pretty much short term, maybe a year or so. So within a year you have your principal that you're able to either reinvest or use for anything else. And the possibilities are, depending on circumstances, you may have to break a CD. You would pay a penalty in terms of the interest that will be lost. But if you really do need the money, that's an option that you could break your CD and use it for whatever the necessity maybe. One other thing you could do, you could borrow against those CDs, and if you don't want to lose the interest, you could borrow. But what I would advise you to look at the differential between the rate you earn on the CD and the rate you're going to pay on the loan. Makes no sense to me personally to be paying more than you're earning.
Okay.
So, but it's important as well that you do have some savings, a nest egg, so you have some liquidity, some cash that you can deal with any emergencies. The next thing is bonds. Again, bonds, pretty good, give you a fixed rate of interest, and you will get that regularly over the period of the bond, whether every half year or some bonds pay quarterly, as the case may be. And it's relatively safe. You wouldn't lose the principal unless the issue of the bonds go bust. And most of the bonds that we have around here are government bonds, and it's quite unlikely that governments will go bust. Although we know some governments refinance from time to time. But bonds are pretty safe investments that you could make and get a rate of interest that could give you some income over time. But there's nothing exciting about that. I mean, again, you're not going to get rich from it. You'll be able to preserve your wealth, but you're not going to get rich from it. The next category is investment funds, and typically mutual funds. And we have some coming into our region now in recent times. Again, these are instruments where one is able to pool your investment with other investors or other holders of these funds, and those funds could then be invested professionally on your behalf by the fund managers. Again, that gives you an even better return on average. It's depending on what the fund managers invest these monies in, the risk could be relatively low. Presumably they're professionally managed, so that these managers have the skill to avoid much of the sort of very volatile instruments, so that you wouldn't have too much risk of capital loss. But again, not terribly exciting. You'll get a return. It's going to be above what you'll get on the other forms of investment. But again, it's not gonna get you rich, so to speak. It's gonna help you to build wealth, but it's not gonna be super. You're not gonna get any super returns from a mutual fund. So we go to the next category, which is equities, and these are shares in companies that are listed on an exchange. This is where I think there's great potential for capital gains and growing your investment. So I strongly recommend the investment in equities to those persons who are about creating wealth. The return on the investment in equities is twofold. There is the dividend, which is an income stream that you get on the equities. As the company makes profits, it declares a dividend and pays a dividend on its shares over time, and that again is good income. Those returns tend to be relatively high. And there's a second part, which is the capital appreciation, the capital gains that you get as the company grows. The company is profitable, its value increases, so the value of your investment in that company increases over time, and that capital gains could be significant, and that is what I think would generate significant returns for investors on the investment in equities. I think one is able to create wealth through investment in equities. Then there's also real estate. I think real estate provides a significant potential as well for persons to create wealth. The value of property increases significantly, and especially in our countries where land is relatively scarce and concentrated in government hands, etc. So the return on property investment tends to be high. You've known many people who have created wealth from property investment, either buying property, upgrading the property, building equity in that property, and selling at a later point and generating significant wealth. The question about renting or buying came up earlier in the conversation, and I would strongly encourage everybody to try to acquire a property, at least one property. Over time, you build equity in that property, and that property is a significant part of most householders' wealth. Most householders, a significant part of their wealth is tied up in the property as they build equity over time. I mean, we know of the prices of lands in St. Kitts and how it has increased over time. I remember when land in Frigate Bay was selling for $2 or $2.60 a square foot. Today, people are asking $20 US per square foot. There's not many other asset classes that could give you that level of return, and you have to live somewhere. So if you're going to live somewhere, it's better you own and benefit from the equity that you accrues within that property than to leave it for a landlord to earn. So equity property investment is one that I would do. But if we look at the investment options on the ECSE, I'm not going to say anything else about real estate. I'm going to speak complete about financial assets now. On the ECSE, we have something like 174 securities listed. And if you are able to see my chart, you would see that includes some 14 equities, 14 companies that are listed on the exchange. 13 or 14 treasury bill instruments, and 12 treasury notes, and 160 debt securities, government debt securities. If we move to the next slide, we'll talk a bit about the equities that are listed. We have the 14 equities, as I said, listed on the exchange, spread across some 6 sectors. We have utilities, we have energy, we have property companies, we have trading companies, and we have financial institutions. So in that 14 companies, we have it spread across some six sectors, which provide significant diversification possibilities for any investor who wants to invest in equities. I think that's one of the strengths of our market. While the numbers of companies are maybe small, the diversity that exists is phenomenal. There's also diversity across the geographic space. Our market is a market of the 8 member states of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, and we have companies listed from 6 of the 8 companies on the ECSE. So again, you have a spread. You have a company in Antigua, in Dominica, in Grenada, in St. Lucia, here in St. Kitts Nevis, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So again, you have a geographic spread that gives you a degree of diversification that is critical in terms of building an investment portfolio. And diversity is important, diversification is important to reduce risk. Again, the equities that we have listed provide significant opportunity for you to create wealth while spreading your risk across sectors and across geographic areas. And then we have the listed debt securities. As I said, these are important in preserving your wealth. We have a number of debt securities. I'm trying to read my slide from the distance, but we have we have not only EC dollar denominated debt instruments listed, but we have US dollar denominated debt instruments listed. So of the 134 bonds that we have listed, 101 EC dollar denominated bonds and 23 are US dollar denominated. And the treasury notes, we have one of the 13 that is a US dollar instrument. So again, if you want to spread your risk across currencies, there's something for you on the ECSE to enable you to do that. And then the debt securities are also spread across geographic space. We have debt instruments listed in Antigua and Barbuda, in St. Lucia, in Grenada, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Dominica. So again, we have a tremendous spread of instruments that enables an investor to find something that meets their needs on the market, or to construct a portfolio that suits their particular circumstances. I invite you to visit our website, www.ecseonline.com, where all this information is available. If you click on any of those buttons at the top, you could drill down to get the information that you want in terms of investing to create wealth for yourself on the market. I would also encourage you to visit one of our member broker dealers. We have 6 across the currency union. Here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have the Bank of Nevis and the St. Kitts and Nevis Angola National Bank. We also have the Bank of St. Lucia, the Bank of St. Vincent and Grenadines, First Citizens Investment Services, and the Grenada Cooperative Bank. And at these brokerage houses, we have representatives who are trained and licensed to provide investment advice. I encourage you to visit one of these brokers and find out how you could go about creating wealth on the ECSE. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trevor. For those of you who are just tuning in, you're listening to the listening and viewing the FIM Festival 2023 live discussion. I'm your moderator, Devon Cornelius, and joining me on the panel this evening is Ms. Davinia Tomlinson, an award-winning author and entrepreneur, as well as Mr. Trevor Blake, Managing Director. Mr. Blake, I had a few questions that came in via social media, and I had questions of my own. You spoke about the importance of maintaining or having good credit. Let's say you have somebody who is currently not in that category, so they're heavily indebted, they have terrible credit. Is there such a thing of getting from bad credit back to good credit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. First thing you have to do is to take stock of your financial affairs.
Okay.
What do I owe? Who do I owe it to? And what we find is you have some persons, they have a higher purchase from maybe 2 of the stores in town. They have paid a loan from one of these operators.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a car loan from one of the banks, and maybe it's a loan for vacation from another bank.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all of that and talk to your bank about consolidating that into one facility that you're able to service. So do an assessment and see what the debt you have, the income that you have available for debt servicing, and try to get one of the institutions to refinance the entire thing so that you pay one payment to clear that debt over time. It's gonna take time, but it could very well be done. The other thing that lots of persons run up is the credit card debt, and that's the most expensive type of debt. So that's the first one you should seek to repay. So you want to be able to get a term loan in order to refinance that credit card bill, pay out that credit card bill, and because the interest rate on that credit card bill is up close to 20%, if not more. For example, I try to pay my credit card bill in full at the end of the month, so I don't pay interest on it. And because no use to me for having savings account earning 2% and I'm paying 20% on a credit card. That makes no sense to me. So try to pay off your credit card every month, and that helps in building your credit as well, and improving your credit score. But anybody who has bad credit, sit down with a financial advisor, sit down with a bank, the credit union, and try to work out a facility that would consolidate all of the debts that you have, so that you pay one installment every month towards clearing that debt. And if you do that, and you do that religiously, you will improve your credit score. The other thing is, I should say to persons out there, ensure that if you have a loan and it is due on the 10th of the month, pay it by the 10th of the month. It does two things. One, it shows that you have the discipline to make the payment. And secondly, you save money, because every day it's late, you're going to get a late fee, and you're going to get more interest accruing on the interest that you have. So you need to pay your loans as they're due. Pay your utilities as they're due. Lenders are now looking at all institutions to try to determine whether or not you are a good risk. So they look at everything, whether it be the Horsfords, TDC, courts, whoever else are giving higher purchase out there. The banks look to them for information on the persons who have outstanding facilities with them and how well they're servicing them, or if they're not servicing them. So it's important that you pay, you meet your obligations when they fall due. Yeah.
How does one get around the issue of not being able to build good credit because of their age and job, where banks won't give them a loan?
Yes, age is definitely a factor. If you're up in age, the banks may be a little reluctant to give you a loan for any long period of time. And this is why, as Davina said, you have to start early, establishing good financial habits, good money habits, saving, investing, and ensuring that you are able to put aside some of your earnings, so that you're not stretched in your later years. She had a very instructive graph that showed the years of I think of accrual and the years of consumption. Those are my words. Yeah. So it's a continuum, and when you get to the age like me, I mean, you're getting down, so you shouldn't be. You should have already sorted out your financial affairs. You should not be in a position that you're looking for credit to refinance debt. But with the best will in the world, sometimes things happen that causes. Okay. Again, you talk to your friendly credit union, talk to your friendly banker, and see what could be arranged within those limited circumstances. What you should not do is to go to, and I'm going to make a few enemies, but to go to those persons who are coming with the quick payday or whatever they loans. Bad news. Try to stay away from them. Stick with your credit unions, your banks, the regulated finance companies, and try to work with them rather than the other, sort of facilities out there which are unregulated, and really the rates of interest that they charge. It might sound like a good thing. All you have to go in and show that you have a paycheck coming in. But trust me, it is the worst thing that you could possibly do. If you remember nothing else, that I say, stay away from them.
Thank you so much for that advice, Mr. Blake. What percentage of your yearly income should be in your savings account in order to carry you over in case of an emergency?
A rule of thumb, I would say, is three to minimum 3 months income, salary. So
Okay.
if you earn $100 a month, you have at least $300. 6 is, more like it. If you have 6 months to guide you through, would be best, but at least 3 months salary in savings to guide you. Because things, like we had COVID, for example, persons lost their jobs. So, even outside of that, you could, the business that you work for, could be, retrenching. You may lose your job for whatever reason. So you need to have something to keep so that you could depend on during the period when you until you search for a new job. You could be ill and unable to work, things like that. Especially if you're self-employed, you probably need a little more than what you would need if you have in a salary job. So at least 3 months, I would say.
Another question coming from social media. I've heard that buying a car or a used car is always better than buying a new car because once driven off the lot, a new car depreciates by about 10%. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it just depends on your circumstances.
Okay.
Yeah, the question is right. Driving, they said 10%. I would say even more. If you drive your car off the lot at TDC or Horsewoods or Keynes or whichever dealer, you cannot sell it for what you've just paid for it. Once you drive off the premises, no, you're going to be able to get what you just paid for it once you've driven it away. Just one of those things about it. People, and look at it. Look, I mean, it's logical. If you have to buy a new car, and somebody already drove it, and the very same model is sitting in the showroom, and nobody's ever touched it. Which one would you go for? Yeah. But a car is a depreciating asset, and in the first year, it's the highest level of depreciation. The hardest car to sell is a car that is under 1 year old. It's the hardest car to sell.
Oh.
Because the price you would want for it would be close to what you've just paid for it less than a year ago. But nobody's going to pay that, or very few people will pay that, knowing they could walk into the showroom and get one brand new.
So it's highly unlikely that you could make a solid profit off of selling a vehicle.
Not new, not a new vehicle.
Okay, new vehicle.
Not a new vehicle. So in that regard, I mean, buying a second-hand one, and if you buy a second one, you care it and you fix it up nicely, and it looks good. Somebody might pay you more than even what you paid for it, but you certainly would not get more for what you paid for a new car, or even the close to the price you paid for the new car once it is below a certain age.
And lastly, why is it that the investment rate for residents and citizens of the ECCU is low compared to that of the United States?
Very good question. Investing is something that is relatively new for us as a people, and this is across the Caribbean. Whereas in the US, it is something. I mean, we have securities markets in the US going back hundreds of years, so it's a habit. The other thing is that we actually are not taught to invest. We get into investment by the way. Whereas in schools in the US and other places, where the questioner spoke about the US, in school the kids are taught financial education. They have financial education in the grade 11, grade 12 in the high schools. Then there's the whole retirement industry in the US is based on investment. So your 401ks, etc., are based on investment. Here, it's your Social Security and your pension funds from your companies, etc. So those are things that lead to the involvement in securities markets or stock markets, as opposed to what we find here in St. Kitts. And it's very new to us. I mean, we've only had a market, securities market, since 2001. The US, as I said, it goes back centuries. Then, and the other thing is that they're the brokers, the mutual funds, etc. The Charles Schwab's, the Fidelity Investments, those that market very heavily, and there are brokers out there selling actively in the US, and that doesn't happen here in the same way. We have broker dealers, yes, but sometimes they're not as aggressive as they could possibly be to get people into investing.
Mr. Blake, thank you so much for that, and we are actually out of time. It's about close to 9:30, and so I'm giving you the opportunity now to give your closing comments.
Right.
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that I think we need to start, and especially amongst the younger generation, because they're the ones who are on the climbing stage rather than the downwards.
Okay.
Is to get involved with investing, to start to invest, to see investing as not something foreign and not something for wealthy people, but for anybody. Anybody could get involved in investing. At whatever stage you're at, how much ever you have, whatever you have to invest, go to one of the broker dealers, talk to them, see what the possibilities are, and start investing. As I said, the only two ways you're gonna really build wealth, unless you win the lottery, or unless you come into a big inheritance, is by investing. And investing in financial assets is one of the best ways of building that wealth. You have a regulated market. You have very disciplined players in the market, the broker dealers, etc. They're all well-known, established financial institutions. The people are well-trained and are licensed to give investment advice. I suggest you visit one of the broker dealers and start to talk to them about getting started in investing and creating wealth for yourselves.
Thank you so much. Davinia?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Mr. Blake has just shared, but I think one thing that I would like to add in addition to that is that, as children form their earliest money habits by the age of 7, which I think is a statistic that is not very well known. So there are lots of habits, when we consider our relationship with money today, there are lots of habits and behaviours that we might have as adults that unless we do some self-interrogation, some self-inquiry, we will have no understanding that we're carrying through both positive and negative habits and behaviours that are impacting and influencing how we manage our money. So I think that is a really good start point for any of us. But as Mr. Blake alluded to in his presentation as well, I think we all need to have some clarity. We all need to have a financial roadmap, or at least some idea of what the destination is, what is the end point, and what are the milestones in place to help us achieve that. So again, if you can all individually think about your personal finance hierarchy, start where you are with what you have, and as Mr. Blake said, ultimately have the objective in mind to invest in assets, but recognizing that we are each of us our biggest investment and asset by far, and so we should feel good about everything that we do every day to develop ourselves, because that knowledge and education is what will enable us to invest in the markets, to thrive in our careers, and ultimately build wealth over the long term.
Thank you so much, Davinia. You've been listening to the Financial Information Month FIM Festival 2023 live discussion. I've been your moderator, Devon Cornelius, and on the program this evening was Miss Davinia Tomlinson, an award-winning author and entrepreneur, as well as Mr. Trevor Blake, a managing director. Guys, thank you so much for being on the panel this evening. It was a very fruitful and engaging conversation. Until next time, and I say next time because I know we're going to come back. You guys are probably going to join me in a different setting. and we're going to continue this conversation. But until next time, you guys stay safe. Thank you.
It's Financial Information Month in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Financial empowerment through education. If you don't know what that is, let me tell you all about it. Learn to spend wisely. Invest to grow your money. Business stability. Step up financially. FIM. Help build the region's economy. Work to financial security. Prosperity for all of we. FIM is for you and me. FIM is for everybody. So tell your friends and your whole family. Financial empowerment through education. Build yourself and the entire vision. Learn to spend wisely. Invest to grow your money. Business stability. Step up financially. Financial Information Month. Financial empowerment through education.